It's a hot topic, and I would like to go dive in this direction. So, do you think the organizations they are prepared to psychological risks?
No, the short answer to that is no, I don't think they are. And that's quite normal. So organizations shouldn't be frightened the fact that they don't really understand it because you're in the majority. And I would say probably 95, 98% of organizations are still scratching their head wondering what it is. So the reality is in Australia in particular is psychosocial safety has always been a work health and safety duty, and it's part of the health bit of occupational health and safety. It just never really got a lot of attention and airplay the way that physical safety did. So the safety industry has been quite good at looking after the physical risks, the things that hurt our backs, stop us cutting fingers off, etc., but not so good at looking at the things that cause mental illness and distress from a psychological perspective. So about 5 years ago, the legislation in Australia was changed to specifically include mental health and well-being, and the intent was to elevate that to the same level as physical safety risks. And but the duty was always there, just nobody really did anything about it. But now they have to. So we have specific law in South Australia, in Australia, and that requires businesses and senior leaders to ensure that people's mental health and well-being is treated at the same level as physical risk. And the challenge is you can't treat them the same because they're very different concepts. So what we did in Australia was created some guidance material which helped organizations understand that legislation a bit better. And we identified 17 specific psychosocial safety hazards that organizations should start to look at. And that's really the starting point, is to do the risk assessments on those 17 hazards.
Wow, 17. That's a lot.
It is. And look, the hazards are broken down into three groups. So there are hazards that relate to behaviors, there are hazards that relate to processes, and then organizational systems. So conventional safety is generally around protecting people from physical harm. And you can buy a barricade, you can put a guard on a machine, you can buy some PPE and protect people from physical injury. But how do you protect a worker from someone else's poor behavior? Or a system that an organization uses that causes too much stress, which then leads to a mental health or a clinical diagnosis for the psychological injury. So they're very different concepts, and that's what people are struggling with at the moment, is really understanding how those 17 hazards manifest in the workplace, and then how do you treat them? And because you can't barricade poor behavior, and you can't buy a guard or PPE to protect somebody from bullying, it's a different concept.
Yeah. But when you're talking about 17 hazards and in a systemic approach, how you see the roles from HR, the safety teams, and the leadership?
Yeah, look, the leadership response is critical. So every leadership response matters. It's incredibly important how leaders respond to these events, and psychosocial safety is no different. So when you look at the types of hazards those 17 hazards present, um, example being some, like, one of the hazards relates to job demands. So the job demands are that the work that's undertaken is too complex, it's too much, it's too difficult for the level of the person that you employ, or it's not stimulating enough and people are bored and it's just mundane. And so then there's job control, like how much control does a person have to do their work, and are they being micromanaged, or do they have no management? Lack of leadership support and guidance and equipment and resources. So these are all things that happen in the workplace. There's another hazard in relation to poor organizational justice. So, and this is generally, and these hazards I'm mentioning here are generally found in the HR department. So, organizational justice relates to like fairness and people being treated equally, and if somebody behaves in one way, then if that behavior is replicated, the sanctions for the people will be the same. So you can't have different sanctions for the same type of behavior. These are all things that cause unfairness, which lead to sort of mental health and stress and anxiety. So if you have those or those hazards in your workplace, probably the reality is they've been dealt with by the HR team. But now in Australia, and certainly in other countries around the world who are implementing this, it's also a safety issue. So you have to work collaboratively. And if you don't work collaboratively, then you're destined for failure or mediocrity. You won't really address the issues. So leadership response incredibly important, and collaboration across HR, IR, and safety now becomes critical.